Have you ever experienced the lingering effects of a toxic relationship with your mother? Have you ever wondered about the long-lasting impact of a toxic maternal relationship on your emotional well-being and how it has shaped your perception of yourself? Are you curious to learn how a difficult or even toxic maternal relationship can affect one's ability to form healthy connections with others? Join me after the intro for a conversation with a very special friend with whom we will answer these and many more questions. Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Rossana D, and this is Forgive and Thrive, a podcast where we explore what thriving in life means and how we can achieve it, irrespective of our past, current condition, and expectations that those around us or society in general may have. Let's go. Welcome to the Forgive and Thrive show. Mothers. We love them and we hate them. The relationship we have with our mothers is never easy, and yet it weaves the intricate threads that shape our very beings and influence the course of our lives. The mother-child bond, with all its complexities, can be both a source of immense joy and a terrain fraught with challenges. It's a realm where love and regret intertwine, where frustration battles with admiration, and where feelings of support, suffocation, or neglect can reside, often turning the most natural relationship of all into a difficult or perhaps even toxic relationship. As we navigate the realm of adulthood, it becomes increasingly clear that the emotions we carry from our interaction with other mothers hold profound significance. Grief, disappointment, or resentment, if left unresolved, can cast a shadow over our emotional well-being and seep into our ability to embrace the role of nurturing parents ourselves. So today we embark on an intimate exploration of how the heart of someone hurt by a difficult or toxic relationship with their mother can heal and find peace. And we delve into this crucial topic with today's guest, Geraldine Crane. Geraldine is a spiritual mentor, coach, hypnotherapist, and speaker. After realizing how toxic the relationship with her mother was, Geraldine cut any contact with her and undertook an intense healing journey. As part of that journey, Geraldine trained as a hypnotherapist, which also helped her to reconnect with her spirituality, and she started to break free from the guilt and the shame. Now Geraldine loves to share all the tools, techniques, and spiritual principles that helped her to find peace and start loving herself. Through her coaching and hypnotherapy practice, she helps women who have had a difficult or even toxic relationship with their mothers to find peace and develop a loving relationship with themselves. And in doing so, develop happier, healthier relationships in all areas of their lives. What a beautiful mission. Hi, Geraldine. Welcome to the Forgive and Try show. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Fantastic. Well, this is a very important topic. So I'm really eager to start talking about it and trying to understand how the relationship we have with our mothers can really shape our entire life. But before we go and we dive into this fascinating topic, I would like to learn a little bit more about you and your journey. In particular, how did you start talking about mother wounds and working with women that also had this issue?
Well, it kind of evolved. It's funny. It became a lot of the women that were coming to me naturally seem to have mother wounds. I tend to work with people who are very highly sensitive, and often that comes with a difficult relationship with a parent or having been in an unsafe environment growing up. But it's really evolved very slowly. I started the business as a clinical hypnotherapist and always wanted to focus on toxic relationships of all kinds because I had not long since come out of a job working as a domestic violence abuse recovery worker. And I had been a probation officer before that and a substance misuse worker. So it just seemed like a natural progression. But as I got into the hypnotherapy, because it puts you into it changes your vibration, it changes your brain waves, and it means that your connection with spirit becomes a lot easier. And so while I was doing the work, I was feeling guidance from spirit as to how I was working. And I started bringing in my spiritual side with my work. I started meditating before seeing clients and getting a lot of guidance around that. And as that developed, I also started opening up a lot more about my relationship with my mum and having a really difficult relationship and how harmful it had been and how long it had taken me to realize, because it wasn't physically abusive, it wasn't sexually abusive, it wasn't overt like that. It was emotional and it was manipulation and psychological. And so it had taken me training in domestic violence and domestic abuse. It took me having a counselor and having children for me to finally realize how bad it was and how harmful it was. And the anxiety I've been battling with since being very young was actually all linked to that relationship. So as I started going out and talking about my business, this was coming out more and more. And it was that people were engaging with. And then I started to really struggle with, well, how do I do the spiritual and work with toxic relationships, particularly mothers? And one night I just couldn't sleep and just heard, but you heal mother wounds using the love of the universe. And I was just like, oh my God, that's it. That's what I do. And then I started talking more and more about that online and doing interviews like this. And it suddenly just fit. Everything was right. It just made sense. And people were reaching out to me, connecting with me. It really resonated for them. But it was that issue that there's just so much stigma around it. It's just not something that people talk about. It's not something people feel comfortable because it feels like you're betraying your mom. But also it's because we get demonized, you get attacked for saying anything about your mom. How could you do that? How could you be that? And it's funny because you could say these behaviors about anybody else in your life, even your father, and people would say, oh, no, 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 you need to get distance. You need to not have this person in your life. You say it's your mother and it's just like, oh, well, you're just expected to put up with it. But it can cause such deep damage in your life and affect every part of your life. It certainly for me was affecting my ability to parent the way I wanted to parent. It was affecting my career, my confidence, my whole sense of being. So I only cut contact when I felt I had absolutely no other option. It wasn't an easy out, like a lot of people seem to accuse me of. It's not an easy out. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. And it's not something I will actively encourage a lot of my clients to do. It's very rare we're like, well, I'll even bring that up. I will let them come to that. I'll give them permission to consider it, but it's not something I would ever say you should be in contact because it's such a personal and really difficult thing to do. But sometimes you have no other option. It's just, if you don't, you will sink. And it's just, I found if I was ever going to be well and healthy, it was something I had to do. And so it's just come that way as my work, whereas it feels like it just slotted into place over the last couple of years, particularly the last year, where it's just, yes, this is what I do. And the way that I help with it is deeply spiritual, is connecting people with that inner divinity, is exploring the idea that you are a spiritual being having a human experience and the resilience and the power that brings, but also connecting you with the love of the universe through your spirit guides. And that unconditional love that comes through is so important when dealing with mother wounds because we haven't often experienced that kind of love. I was blessed, I did experience that love in other areas of my life, but lots of the women I've dealt with haven't. And so when they connect with this love of their spirit guides, it's life-changing. And it really helps. The love you get from that guides you back to yourself, guides you back to who you truly are. And that enables you to start really loving and accepting yourself. It's just beautiful.
That is such an interesting way of discovering that there was this difficult relationship at the basic of your own life and was affecting every decision. You mentioned a few issues there. First, societal pressure doesn't really allow us to say, oh, I've got a difficult relationship with my mother. And you feel guilty, perhaps, for just saying that. But the other is It's very difficult because very often these relationships are a mix of love and I wouldn't hate, but at least some
Yeah.
emotional abuse. What can we really pay attention to? What are the signs that we should really pay attention to that may point us towards mother wound and to say, well, perhaps this relationship has aspects, maybe not all of it, but there are certainly aspects that are toxic for me and I need to do something.
Yeah. So there's two ways of looking at this. There's one way of looking at you and then seeing, is this linked to my relationship with my mum? So most people that have mother wounds struggle with anxiety, struggle with the sense of self because they've usually been told who they are. And quite often, having opinion of your own is not accepted. It's seen as a betrayal. You need to be in line with her worldview, particularly if you've got a narcissistic mother. Um, and there can be real issues around being able to make your own decisions because you don't trust yourself. Real people pleasing, constantly feeling, you need to make everybody happy, that your worth depends on how useful you are, how much you're serving other people, that you have to be serving others to have worth, which is very heavy to carry around and actually shows in the body. Often, when there's mother wounds, there is issues around the shoulder, around the back, but especially around the hips, gynecological, IBS, all around that area. I had SPD, endometriosis, I've got ulcerative colitis. These are all issues around the sacral chakra, around the hip area. That's where we tend to carry a lot of these wounds because of that connection to mother in that area. And it's also that, the base of your back where you're carrying all that weight of extra responsibility, because there's so many issues around feeling responsible for everybody's well-being, and a lot of that does link to most of the women that I work with are highly sensitive. They've had to be, because they've had to be able to judge, what mood is mum in? How safe am I today? What do I need to do? So that's like walking around on eggshells, trying to keep everybody happy so she stays stable and I stay safe. So they develop a real sensitivity. I also believe a lot of us are born sensitive, and that's why we end up in that role more than maybe another sibling, is because we have that sensitivity and then it's enhanced by having to use it all the time. So when you can feel other people's emotions like that, you can feel if they're feeling good or feeling bad. And if they feel bad, it's horrible because you can feel it and you don't want to feel it, but also you don't want them to feel this feeling that you're feeling. So you do what you can you feel this deep sense of responsibility to fix things for everyone, which just ends up completely exhausting you. So a lot of people with these issues have autoimmune issues, they have headaches and migraines and just real stress issues, high cortisol levels, things like that. So it's being really aware of that. Within your relationship, the things to look out for are when something good happens to you, does she try and take credit? Does she try and make it about her? Well, I brought you up right. I did this, not taking credit for you and what you've achieved. If you're ill, well, I was worse than you. I've had it worse than that. Well, when I had that injury or when I gave birth, and it's all about them. And that's a real clear indicator. There's also that thing of, do they respect your boundaries? So when you say, can't answer the phone today, but they still ring and get very angry if you don't answer the phone. Just not respecting you as an individual. So if you have a differing opinion to them, or maybe, they've had an argument with somebody else and you're trying to say, well, the other person's got a point, and it's just an absolute betrayal. So that's not respecting you having your own opinion. But for me, I had a very enmeshed relationship with my mom. She saw me as an extension of her. So I had to have the same opinions as her. She expected me to invite her everywhere with my friends, despite, I was young and wanting to go out with my friends. She expected to be part of that. When I had friends over to stay at the house, or just come for a couple of hours if I was upstairs giggling with them, while I'm lonely downstairs. So that parentification, you are responsible for my well-being. You have to do and take care of me, really put in that role of parent. I was very much put in the middle position with my parents to negotiate around money when they divorced. It's really been put in that position of responsibility. And that's where a lot of those feelings of feeling responsible for everybody else's well-being, because it's almost trained into you, you know? Things like, if you don't answer the phone, well, what if I'm dead at the bottom of the stairs? You can't live with that pressure. You can't live on high alert all the time, constantly aware of how do I keep her stable and how do I keep her happy. But there's other ways that it can show, ones that I didn't experience, things like just mum being really cold, just gives nothing, doesn't express her emotions, doesn't explain how she's feeling, isn't your safe space for you to have emotions. So if you cry, if you're upset, if you're angry, you shut down, even punished for having emotions, for being upset. So just completely shut down. And those women tend to become very hyper independent. I can do this on my own. I've got this on my own. And they never ask anybody else for help. Partly they don't want to burden anybody, but it's also just a complete lack of trust because they're too scared of showing their emotions. It's almost programmed into them. Like, it's really hard for them to cry even. And it's awful to watch. It's heartbreaking. So it can show in so many different ways. There are so many different ways that a relationship can be toxic. But I would say the clearest thing is if you ask for something, you say you need something, and that is not respected, whether it's I need some communication, I need to know that you love me, you care about me, and you get nothing, or even that I need you to give me some space, and they don't respect that or get angry for you asking, that's something's really wrong there.
Mm. There are two aspects here that really caught my attention. One is the sensitivity that people, especially women that are most affected by mother wound, have. And society doesn't like sensitivity. Society thinks that sensitivity is something bad, is weakness at the very least. So understanding that that is not actually true is somebody with a very high thermometer to measure the temperature in the room and understand what's going on. And the second aspect that really caught my attention is the generational trauma that we pass from mother to child, and then from that child that becomes mother and to their, and how difficult it can be really to break that cycle.
Yeah.
Isn't it? So do you have experience in that sense, for example, where your clients that have seen this kind of behavior from their grandmother on their...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had several clients who've come to me and, well, my grandmother's like this, and that's why my mother's like this. What's beautiful is the amount of people who come to me and talk to me who are breaking that cycle. And I absolutely honor them because it's not easy. It can be like certain things can happen and it just triggers that inner child in you that's hurt and it comes out, and it takes a lot of self-awareness, stillness, reflection, inner work to be able to catch that and change it around. So I absolutely have so much love and respect and honor for the women that I work with and other women that you know, and men who are out there doing this work, because mother wounds do affect men. I just tend to work with women, and I do find it's more common with women because there is something that's different sometimes about that relationship between a mother and a daughter. However, I would never dismiss and say men don't, they do. It can be slightly different, or it can actually be really similar depending on the man and the mother.
Well,
So
I guess it's about that sensitivity, isn't it? Sensitivity is a kind of female trait. It doesn't belong to only women.
No, definitely not. And actually, being sensitive is generally, not very. I've been told all my life, you're too sensitive, you're too sensitive. We need to wrap you in cotton wool. Yeah. And it's really, coming into ownership of that actually being sensitive is a beautiful thing. It's a really beautiful thing. And it's my sensitivity that's enabled me to connect with spirit so much more. It's enabled me to do the work that I do. It enables me to hold safe spaces for people. The feedback that I get from all the women that I work with is, you make me feel safe and you make me feel accepted. And to be able to do that, you need to be able to read them. You need to be able to, what does this person need? Some people need, full on, I'm here for you, almost in the face, I've got you. Other people need you to really hold back and let them come their own way. And so I learned to use my sensitivity to be able to read that and know what each individual needs. So it's a really beautiful gift, but you need to take care of yourself with it. And if it isn't balanced out with a real strong sense of self-worth, that's when you can become people pleaser and you can become a doormat. There's a wonderful book written by a woman called Anita Moorjani called Sensitive is the New Strong. I love this woman in general, but I love this book. And that's very much about making sure that your sense of worth, she uses the word ego. I'm very careful about using the word ego because it's used in all good and bad ways these days. But she's talking about that sense of identity, sense of self, that sense of worth needs to be just as high as your sensitivity to the world, your consciousness. It needs to be at the same level because it will be that will protect you. It will be that will give you your strength and give you your ability to hold boundaries and know that you've got a right to hold those boundaries. So sensitivity is incredibly important, but you must know your worth. You've got to take care of yourself. You've got to know it's okay to step back and have time to yourself or do what you need to do. So, for example, if I have a lot of family around, particularly if they're staying for a couple of days, there'll be times where I really feel it. I can really feel it. So there'll be times where I just go up to my bedroom, lay on my bed, completely quiet. And I just need that time. And I no longer feel like I'm being selfish or lazy. I know it's what I need to do to refill my cup so I then have more to give. You cannot give away what you don't have. So you've got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. But when we're very sensitive, we can give of ourselves without even realize we're giving it. So that self-care has to be top notch. You have to really, really focus on it.
May I take you to a specific period of a child development, or I should say, the development into adulthood? Because there is a time when we are very young and then we go to the teenage years when we don't know everything and as children. So obviously our mothers need to be a little bit more present, I suppose, and take decisions for us. But that also is the time when that self-worth develops, and is also the time where that sensitivity perhaps can be really, really wounded by strong behaviors, let's put it this way. What would you advise to mothers in that particular period, if they are dealing with children in that particular period, how they can allow them to flourish and blossom in life, exploit any form of sensitivity they might have, develop completely their self-worth without being really too obsessive?
Well, I'm no expert on child development, but from my own personal perspective, I think the most important thing is to give them a safe space. That no matter no matter what they do, what they've said, what tantrum they've had, you stay calm and you give them that space. Sometimes there's times when you're not able to do that, when they're triggering you in some way, and that's when you have to know, I need to step away for a bit. And if you've got somebody you can tag team with, that's wonderful. If you haven't, all respect to single mothers and fathers, I think they're all amazing. There's nothing wrong with taking yourself away until you've got yourself calm and then coming back. Don't react to if they're having a tantrum or throwing things around or being obstructive in any way, don't match that behavior. You've always got to come from a very calm energy, but also very accepting. Like, I can see how you're feeling, and it's respect that. It's not dismissing it. I got a lot of you being very silly or you're oversensitive, and this wasn't particularly from my mother. I would get it from other places in my life, and it's just really honoring the way they feel. Like, my son's come to me with some very odd fears. And other people I can imagine would go, oh, stop being stupid. I didn't do that. I just sat with him with it, let him explain it to me, and kind of explored it with him, and just really sat in my own stillness. Like, it's really important to really get still yourself, really listen, be very present with them. So don't be thinking about, well, if I do this, maybe this could happen further down the line. Don't be thinking about, well, when I did this, so don't be going into the past, don't be going into the future. Stay really present with them, because that way you will really feel what's going on for them, and they will feel your presence. And that in itself will make them feel safe, and make them feel held, heard, and seen. Because the things that I hear so much time and time again from my clients is they weren't seen, they weren't heard, and their feelings were not respected. And that's the most important thing. Don't put pressure on yourself to always get it right, because we're all human beings and we do get wounded and our triggers go off, and sometimes we're just tired, and I certainly do not get it right all the time. I know that. But I always apologize if I've got it wrong as well. Like, admit you're wrong. Like, let them know you're a human being. I got that one wrong. I'm really sorry. I lost my temper. I'm really sorry. I'm here with you now. But yeah, give them that space. Just be with them, really present.
Geraldine, have you ever experienced yourself or perhaps somebody you work with misunderstanding? Like, for example, talking about, if you like, that generational trauma that is passed from mother to daughters and then from them to their children. Something that perhaps happened and the mother had an understanding of a situation that was completely misunderstood by the child, and they created a sort of completely different picture of what was going on, and that affected them. So for them it was absolutely real, but the mother, so it was more a misunderstanding that just needed to clear and create space to.
It's something that we have to be very aware of when doing regression in hypnotherapy, because and it's something I will always warn anybody I'm doing this with, is when we regress, the memory that you're experiencing, that you're going back to, the event that you're re-experiencing, you are re-experiencing as you thought about it at the time. You're not experiencing it as it actually happened. It's coming through the prism of your 3-year-old mind. I've even gone, because I have hypnotherapy myself, and I've gone back to childhood memories, and I'm experiencing things in a very textual way. Like, I could feel, like, emotions and experiences I could feel as a texture. It's very odd. But it's just realizing that was my very young mind and how I was experiencing things. So when you go into hypnosis, it is being really aware of, this is your 2-year-old mind. But what you can then do is, that 2-year-old who's hearing mum shouting at them, you can then bring forward grown-up version of them to say, okay, what's really happening? Is this what's really happening there? And you can also get them to go into the position of mum or dad and say, okay, what maybe was happening from their perspective? What are they saying? What's they bringing forward? And it's incredible the wisdom that comes forward, and their ability to go, oh, they didn't mean that, or they didn't say it in that way, or they were just trying to protect me. Quite often it's things like parents saying, oh no, you shouldn't do that, and it's held them back. So that it's held them back in, like, years later through their work or whatever. And actually what the parent has done is just been really worried for them and tried to protect them and just said completely the wrong thing.
Absolutely.
So it's, and sometimes the client I'm working with, actually doesn't have much memory of this conversation or didn't realize the significance it had, but actually certain words have imprinted deep and their interpretation, the way they've experienced. So the way I coach and the way I work with people is always through the idea that we are living in the experience of our thinking, not living in the experience of our circumstances. And that becomes really clear when you do past life regression, because they experience their thoughts about what's happening, not actually what happened. So it's always really interesting. I'm sure we've all had it where, you've had a child go, stop shouting at me. And you're like, I'm not shouting. But they're hearing shouting. Why are you so angry? I'm not. But they're experiencing their thoughts about this conversation between the two of you, not actually what's happening. So yeah, it's something to be really aware of when I'm doing this work with people.
Beautiful. So, in these situations, for example, how important would it be to embrace vulnerability and go back to your mother, your parent, and say, well, this is the situation, how I experienced it. Can we talk about it?
That would depend on the mother or the father. Some parents you can have these conversations. The way we do it, the way I do it, and the way I know other hypnotherapists will do it, is you bring that parent forward in hypnosis and let them talk about it there, because what they're able to do then is completely safe to be completely honest and just let things out. Because a lot of the problems is the emotions that we haven't dealt with at the time have turned into like stored energy in your body, and that stored energy is not being released, and so it's piling up and piling up and piling up, and it's like releasing, as my hypnotherapy tutor always tells me, it's like releasing the pressure cooker. But it's also about letting that energy out so you can let new energy in. It's about letting that energy needs to cycle, but what we tend to do is hold on to things, shut our heart center down, and like, nope, not letting anybody in, not letting anything out. And that's when things get stagnant and you get pains, aches, anxiety. It affects everything. So it's very much about going back to that memory, releasing the emotion around it, allowing that conversation between you and your parent in a safe way that will allow it to release. There are times where certain clients will go back to a parent to talk, but I would say that that's extremely rare, because generally the mothers that we're dealing with are not able to hear it. And actually, if I actively encourage them to go and have these conversations, the results are unlikely to be good. Because a lot of the time, a lot of the suffering that's coming from my clients is this expectation or waiting for mum to change, waiting for mum to be something she's not able to be, and she would have to do lots of inner work and take responsibility and do that work to be able to be that person you want her to be. And she may simply not be capable of it, whether due to wounds, mental health issues, who knows? This is the thing I always say to women I work with straight away, is they always want to know why. And I always say, you're not going to find out exactly why your mum has behaved the way she is, because it's unlikely she will ever go to the therapy where we could find out. We're the ones who go for the therapy, and we have to accept that that's not going to happen. We have to accept they are the way they are, the way they are now, and you have to accept that there's nothing you can do about it. You have to accept that it wasn't your fault, the wounds that were caused to you, but you have to accept that your responsibility now to heal them. That also means the wounds caused to her were not her fault. However, it's her responsibility to deal with them, and you can't do anything about that. And often if we do try and go and have these difficult conversations with them, it can actually make things worse, because it's almost coming out of an expectation that you're going to get an apology or some closure or some acceptance of responsibility. And I'm not saying it never happens, because it does. And I've seen just the fact that the daughter is able to start just accepting that's the way they are. They then find a way of having a relationship with them. And quite a few of the women I work with, they manage that, which is beautiful. But yeah, difficult conversations often with mothers like that. It's rare that
I
it
guess
works.
it's very difficult to discuss about these kind of things with your
Mm.
mother, and I can relate completely on
Mm.
point. Whenever there is something that really doesn't work in our relationship, and I try to tell her and say, well, it's
Mm.
really not working, she becomes very defensive, and I
Yeah.
think that is probably one of the issues.
Mm. I think it takes a lot as a mum. There's a lot of pressure on a mum to be a good mum. Like, it's all right for dads not to be great dads, but mums have to be good mums. Like, there's this immense pressure. This is all part of the same stigma. There's this immense pressure for mums to get it right all the time and to be perfect. But there's also, it's one of the deepest wounds that we can get is if our children tell us we haven't been good mothers. I know there is things that have happened between me and my daughter when she's autistic and learning disabled, and her behavior became very difficult when she was younger, and we got into conflict. And I wouldn't be surprised if she comes to me and, I mean, she's learning disabled, so it's probably unlikely, but she could come to me in 10 years' time and said, but you said and did this. And it takes a lot for you to be able to say, oh, I did, I'm really sorry. It takes a lot as a mother to go, no, I'm not a good mum, or I got this wrong. It's really hard. It's like one of the hardest things I would say for a person to be able to do is, I've not been a good parent. So I think we're asking a lot. And usually if people they've not learned or know how to do this reflection, or sometimes if you're dealing with somebody who's got a narcissistic brain in their brain, I just don't think they're capable of it. I just don't think they're wired completely the wrong way. Just they cannot do it. And so if you keep going and trying to have these conversations, all it's going to do is cause you pain. You have to accept that they are the way they are. They're going to keep behaving, and the focus has to be on you. It cannot be on them. When I work with people, I spend a tiny bit of time exploring and understanding mother wounds, but the rest of the time, the whole of it, like I have a 7-month program, 1 month is that, the rest of it is about you and you accepting and loving yourself. That's where the peace comes. It has to come from you and within you. I'm afraid we have to leave mum the way she is. And you never know, sometimes when we start doing this work, it does have a ripple effect on them and things get better, which is lovely to see. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the fact that we become less easy to manipulate and really owning our stuff, it gets worse for a little bit. But that then gets really clear on what boundaries do I need, do I need to pull away? Do I need to get some space? It starts getting really clear on, okay, what's the next step now? So it's never one thing works for them. Right.
I can totally understand that. I can totally understand that.
Mm.
Geraldine, very often when we face difficulties and challenges in life, especially when are emotionally related, we tend to take a lot of coping mechanisms to just deal with them, right?
Mm.
Have you noticed anything specific with people that were dealing with mother wounds and how they used external mechanisms just to cope with those difficulties?
I find the main thing is they just want to please and keep other people happy. So often when they can't face their stuff, they're going around fixing everybody else's stuff. There's this real, they are beautiful souls. I am very blessed to work with the most beautiful women. If you're going to be in a crisis, they are the best people to have around. They're amazing. They're on it. They know what they're doing. But the problem that comes is they sacrifice themselves. That's the problem that comes with their coping mechanisms is they put themselves at the bottom of the pile. And they think that's because that makes me a good person. Your worth is not equated to how much you help and serve other people. It is not equated to how useful you are to other people. It's beautiful that they want to do that, and I don't ever want to take that away, but I want them to do it in a way that doesn't sacrifice themselves en route.
But I think that is really something that we learn very early on, especially with girls. We
Mm.
tend to praise them. Oh, you
Mm.
brought back good, grades from school. Oh, well done, you, right? Good girl. You cleaned your room. Oh, good girl, you did this. So we learn to please people just to pass by, to go by. And it's very difficult to move away from that because it becomes very much our identity, even if it is.
Yeah. Oh
Right.
yeah. It was a big thing that I had, was a real, I'd been my mum's carer from being 12. In fact, even younger with more of her emotional stuff. But so I was dealing, she had really limited mobility issues. She was bedridden quite a lot of the time, but also had serious mental health issues. So I would be keeping the house clean, cooking the meals, helping her wash, sometimes feeding her, certainly helping her dress. But I would also be, if her mental health deteriorated, I would be the one stopping her from cutting herself. I would be the one calming her down. I would be, I mean, often the way I calmed her down was by stroking her ego and telling her, yes, you are the victim, everybody else is wrong. But it does become, but it was this, I was really praised for being such a good girl, for being such a good daughter, for being so good. And that is a heavy weight to bear. And also is not always easy for siblings if they're not able to do that. If actually they do protect themselves and take themselves away, suddenly they're the bad one. They're not the bad one, they're just a child. It's really difficult. I think that we have to be really wary as parents of rewarding our children too much for being obedient. And when our children are rebellious or trying to stamp their identity on something, of not squashing that, and really honoring that they know they're loved even when they're being naughty and untidy. And, it's something that I try to say to my children, I love you no matter what, because my daughter, if she's had a particular tantrum, she'll come down, it's all my fault, I'm really sorry, I'm awful. And my son will go, I'm a terrible person. No, 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 no. You're a human being. And you cannot get it right all the time, and nor should you. Otherwise, how do we learn? We don't learn if we don't get it wrong. If you do a spelling test, that word you get wrong will be the one you learn the most from. It's the same with our life lessons, and I think sometimes there is too much focus on the obedient child. It's the good child. That's not fair, especially when, I've got a child with autism. Sometimes what looks like bad behavior is dysregulation, is being overstimulated, is not coping with the environment she's in. And it's being really aware of that and not punishing her for that. You can't punish that. Ridiculous. And it's really important that we accept our children the way they are and help them to connect with that calm space within. Help them to know that that's there. Help them to get present and not get lost in the past and future. Help them to accept themselves. I work a lot with my clients around realizing you are so much more than your body and your mind, and realizing your mind is that noisy, and I call it the egoic mind. It's that noisy little voice that goes on, and realizing if you can observe it, you can't be it. Instead, you are the awareness of it. And the more you can step back and observe it and not add judgment to it, nothing like that. I've had somebody say to me once, well, I just reject it and call it bad names. No, 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 no. That is a part of you. So you give it tenderness and love and patience, but you don't have to believe it and you don't have to over-identify with it. You are the observer of it. And helping my children to do that, just, you don't have to believe all those thoughts that are going on in your head. Just take a moment. I think there's things that can really help with the kids there. But I always say it with the caveat of, I don't always manage this. I do the best I can. There's days that I get it wrong. But they're the days that you go, sorry, I got it wrong today. I got it wrong.
That's life. Everybody can have a moment. So that's absolutely beautiful. Geraldine, can we go into some more tips and perhaps some steps that people can take, when they embark in this journey to sort of heal other wounds?
The first step I would always say to anyone, get still. Find a way that you can still your noisy mind. Like I say, don't over-identify with it, but you need to be able to slow things down. A lot of the people that I work with tend to have anxiety, and it's no wonder. When you've not had that safe space or that relationship with your mom, anxiety is very, very common. But what anxiety tends to be a lot of the time is just too much thought going on, too much busy thought. So it's about slowing it down. And that allows you, once you slow that down and stop over-identifying with your mind, that's when you connect with your own inner divinity. Or I often refer it to it when I'm working as your internal sunshine. Your internal sunshine, this inbuilt well-being is always there. It's always shining. But we get dark clouds that come. But if we can see that they're just dark clouds and they will pass, if we know that the sunshine's there, then you have this resilience and you just know that your well-being will return. You just need to reset. It's a bit like, I live in the UK and I live in, it's pretty cloudy right here right now. If we just panicked every time we couldn't see the sun, we'd be a mess in the UK, wouldn't we? We'd be an absolute mess. So it's that same faith that you have that inbuilt well-being as you do in the sun. It is there. In fact, I fully believe it's all part of the same energy and the same intelligence, and it is there. And we just have to allow those black clouds to go across. So it's really, rather than trying to fix things when you're feeling those dark clouds coming in, don't try and fix things because you can't see clearly. I always say it's like asking a mechanic to fix your car in the dark. He's going to make mistakes, or she's going to make mistakes. Let's not be sexist about car mechanics. But you've got to, you've got to turn the lights on first. So it's about how can I get still and how can I lift my vibration? How can I lift my mood? So for me, it's going for long walks, getting out in nature, spending time with a friend who you feel very safe with and can just be yourself. Music is a big one for me. I put musicals on and just sing at the top of my voice. Whatever it is for you, it's finding, like for my husband, it's gardening. He'll go off and just kind of ponder around the garden. It allows you to just get still and it allows you to connect with your true self. And that can just allow some of those dark clouds to part and just some clarity to start coming through. So stillness is always the first thing that I teach.
And instead, if we had a friend, for example, that has suffering or is suffering from mother wounds, and we recognize perhaps some of the signs, how can we help them?
That it often depends at what point they're at. So if you'd met me 10, 15, 20 years ago and you said you've got issues with your mother, you'd have lost a friend. My mum would have won. Bless my husband, didn't say a word, just kind of held space for me and was there for me for over 10 years. And once I finally saw what was really going on, that's when he spilled everything came out. Bless you. You've got to read how much they can hear at that point. And what kind of relationship do you have? How secure it is that you can say that. One of the ways you can do it is reflect back of, but how's that behavior making you feel? Do you think that's so you don't overtly go, your mother's in the wrong? Just give them that reflective space of maybe that's not all that healthy. Are you okay? And it's giving them the most important thing you can do for a friend in any situation really is give them that safe space to really just let go and don't bring any judgment in. If you start bringing in judgment of mom, you will push her away until she is ready to really see it. And then even then be very careful, It's like I can badmouth my mother, but you can't. Okay, be very careful with it. It takes a lot for a person to really be able to hear things very clearly. So the most important thing is be the safe space. If they are saying to you, no, my relationship with my mum's awful, point them in my direction, send them to me. I was really blessed when I first got contact with my mum that actually one of my best friends said to me, I don't get it. I have a really lovely relationship. She got a beautiful relationship with her mum. And she said, I'm going to be really honest, I don't get it, but I'm here for you. I see what you're doing and I see, I can see that it's right for you. And she has supported me all the way through as I've gone on the healing journey, and she's cheered me on. In fact, I remember as I got better and was feeling much better, she was in tears, like, you're so much better. It was just awful watching you get, but she was always a safe space for me to talk about it, even though she fully admitted she didn't fully understand. And then really get them into a community that does. A big part of my work is creating that community. So I have a group on Facebook that's just there for anybody who's got any women, I'm afraid, but it's a space for spiritual women who've got these wounds where we can talk about it really safely. There's no judgment, there's no competition, because I've been in groups with, daughters of narcissistic mothers, and it's been, my mother's worse than your mother. That's not allowed in my community. It's about just being that safe space for each other and fully understanding. And it's such a beautiful thing when I do my group program. I have a 7-month program. The community that builds between the women because they finally feel safe and accepted. Because another thing that a lot of women who've had mother wounds struggle with female relationships, particularly in groups. There's just not knowing quite they can be. I certainly did it. I could be very intense in female friendships and want like a real deep closeness. It's not healthy. And then just high anxiety of how do I keep everybody happy? How do I fit in here? So for them to find a space with other women who get that and just accept you on your good days, your bad days, and just hold that space for you is really beautiful. So it does matter to kind of find a space where when that friend can talk openly about it. But first and foremost, if you've got a friend like that, be their safe space and let them know that they have a right to peace, they have a right to boundaries.
Yeah, safety is definitely the most important aspect whenever you feel that you have gone through emotional turmoil, any form of abuse, whether it's physical, verbal.
Oh yeah.
Safety is the first thing. So thank you very much for stressing that out. I think it's very important, and very often sensitive people are in very unhealthy and unsafe places. Geraldine, looking back on your healing journey, or even a few steps before starting, what sort of advice would you give to the young Geraldine?
I've done reels on this before, just thinking about there's different stages. I think if I talk to myself just before I really realized, it would be trust the way you feel. Trust that there's something felt like it was wrong. However, she was always very good at manipulating me to thinking I was in the wrong, not her, that something was up with me. And it would be to really trust when things don't feel right. Trust your body tells you, like you feel it with anxiety or pain. I had all sorts of problems with my shoulders and my back, endometriosis, and my body was screaming at me. But so was my mind. Like the anxiety was sky high. So it was, I needed to listen to myself, and really, and that needed to be validated. Like, trust yourself, something's not right here. And also, really clearly, you're not who she says you are. She told me I was a bad carer, I was selfish, all those things. Wasn't true. It's not who I was. Even my grandmother said to me, I thought you were this person that she would talk about, but luckily in the last few years of her life, I spent a lot of time with her, just me and her, and she said, you're not who she says you are. You're so much more. And I was very blessed to be very, very close to her. But we don't always have somebody around like that. So you have to do some of this work for yourself. I think if I was talking to myself just after cutting contact, just keep going. Just keep going. This is awful and it's hard and it's difficult and it's painful. And you'll feel every emotion under the sun, from joy to relief to grief to sadness to guilt to anger, the whole spectrum. You experience it all. Just keep going, because it has taken me somewhere incredible. Just have to keep going, and you have to go through it. The good, the bad, the ugly. Keep going.
Beautiful. You just mentioned guilt, anger, resentment, all these emotions. How important it is for someone that has been affected by their relationship with their mother, especially if a toxic nature, to get rid and break free from these emotions. And with that, I would like to bring the concept of forgiveness, which for me is a mix of acceptance of what happened in the past. You cannot change that. And in the same way, we cannot change, unfortunately, people. We cannot, but however, we can give ourselves the permission to move forward and say, okay.
That's what forgiveness is really for, right? Isn't it? I think that's the problem. A lot of people, I can't forgive her for what she's done. It's not about her. This is about you. So I don't actually use the word forgiveness. When I work with my clients, we talk about acceptance. And I talk about extreme acceptance. Like, you have to accept the way she is. You have to accept what's happened. And because acceptance is what allows you to move forward. And I think once you really work on acceptance, forgiveness comes without you realizing. Forgiveness isn't something you do. It kind of happens. Acceptance is the thing that you do. It's funny because I was actually discussing this with my hypnotherapist, and he said the same. It's just forgiveness is something that comes. It isn't really, for me, an active, no, I will forgive her. You can't really yet. It has to just evolve within you. Like, suddenly one day you realize, oh no, I've forgiven her. The acceptance, that's something you can actively work on. It's accepting the way she is, accepting the way you are, accepting what is right now will enable you. It's when you're holding on for closure. Like, I love, there's a quote from Abraham Hicks that there is no closure, there's only openings. Because if you keep hanging on, focusing on wanting some closure or wanting some responsibility or an apology, you're just holding yourself in pain. Whereas if you can accept that that's not going to happen, that you need to focus on you and your healing journey, that opens everything up. You just open yourself up to healing and to moving forward and to letting new energies into your life. There's one thing, when I cut contact with my mum, I hadn't realized how much of my energy she took, how much of my space she took up. Because once I cut her out, all these amazing people flooded into my life. Not straight away, but they came. And I realized how much more capacity I had for them. I had time, I had space, I had energy for them that I hadn't had before. And for myself, and believing there was things I could do. I've done incredible things over the last couple of years that I would never have believed possible. And I know there's even more incredible things to come. But you need that space to be able to see that and do that. So, yeah, it's important stuff.
Absolutely. And talking about things that will come in your life, what are you working and planning for the rest of the year? And is there anything that you
Yes. So I've got my my 7-month program. I just ran for the first time from January. It actually started on my mum's birthday and finished on mine. And it's a 7-month program where we meet twice a month to talk and share and do meditations and card readings and things, but we talk mainly around mother wounds and how we're going. But there's a lot of pre-recorded content. So I spent the last 10 months taking my first founding members through. There was no content when we started. And as we've gone through, I've built this program. And it's now complete. It's all ready. I would never have believed I could do something like this, but all the tech and everything, built this whole program, and that is soon to be released. I'm working on I'm actually having a meeting tomorrow with my business consultant about planning my year. So I will be launching that program again. I also do a spiritual development course, which is a 4-week course teaching you how I connect with spirit guides and teaching you to do the same. So by the end of the course, you're actually sharing messages from your spirit guides with the other women in the group. And both those programs, once you've completed, are circles that you can join to keep either having that support you need or keep practicing the spiritual. So they're a big focus of my work right now. But I'm also working on this serene way that I work with people. So we're working around understanding, then stillness, emotion, reconnection, energy, and the power of now and empowerment. So it follows the word serene. And this is the way I work with people one-to-one and in groups. I am going to be putting it into a book. So that's coming.
Wow.
And always looking for opportunities to speak, because this is an issue that isn't talked about and needs to be. And I will continue to keep pushing and just being a voice. Because even, people who've been through my program, I say, oh, can we do a video testimonial? They don't feel able to because of fear of what other people will say. There will be a couple, I'm sure, who will do it, but well, what if my mum sees it? What if? And I completely respect that. Absolutely respect that. Not everybody is able to talk about this stuff openly. I am, so I will. And I'm determined to create more safe space, make this space even bigger, because the more people I can reach and help, the better. This is important stuff. The ripple effect is massive. You can help a mother to heal. Wow, it just ripples. And even women who aren't mothers, they will be friends and partners and colleagues. It ripples. So it's important work.
Absolutely.
So yeah, there's big things coming.
Absolutely. So if our listeners would like to get in touch with you and learn more about you, where they can find you?
So the best place to find out more about me is in my Facebook group, which is completely free. It is for women only, which is called Serene, Spiritual and Empowered. So it's dead easy to find. Or if you want to find out more about working with me one-to-one, I have a website called GeraldineCrane.com. Again, I like to keep things simple. There is a site which is called Geraldine Crane's Hub, and that's about the group work. Don't think that's as easy to find, so it's best just to get in touch with me and I can direct you to it. I'm working on that at the minute. But if you want to get in touch and see how I can help, I do offer a free 15-minute call with anyone just to explore. And you can get in touch with me via my email, which is just hello@geraldinecrane.com. So it's very easy to find me. I'm there.
Fantastic. And it will be even easier because we will put all the links in the description of today's episode. So I will
Wonderful.
find you and just click on the link. Geraldine, one final question. If there was one take-home message from this conversation that you would love everybody to remember, what that would be?
I think it's knowing that nothing's worth your peace. You have a right to peace in your life. I know we focus a lot on happiness and finding your happiness. Happiness is an emotion that can come and go. Peace is something that can run through everything. Even when things are bad or good, there can be this deep peace within. And we all have a right to it. And if something is costing you or preventing you from being able to access it, you have a right to put boundaries in place. You have a right to take care of yourself. You have a right to love and honor and be tender and kind to yourself. So yeah, that's what I would like people to take away.
Wow, that's beautiful. Well, I hope that this episode has shed light on the profound impact the motherhood has on women's life, relationships, and emotional well-being, and the importance of understanding its origins, as well as the toxic patterns and coping mechanisms that emerge within these relationships. And I want to leave you with a quote from Barry Davenport, who said, "You don't have to repeat the trauma of your childhood. Use the pain your mother inflicted on you to motivate you to find a better way to raise your own children. Geraldine, thank you so much for accepting our invitation, for sharing so much about your personal story and your mission, your message. I absolutely love and agree with you. This is something that we should talk about more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we would love to know what you think about this topic. Do you or anybody you know have mother wounds that need healing? If so, I'm sure there is plenty in this episode to understand your situation and get you started in your healing journey. Please help us grow by sharing and liking our content so we can continue bringing more value to you and other people that may need it. Obviously, if you have any question that perhaps we didn't address today, as always, let us know. Get in touch. We will strive to search those answers for you. Also, don't forget to check Geraldine's website, to follow her on social media. You will find all the links in the description of today's episode. Hopefully not, but if you've been affected in any way by the topic we discussed today, as always, I invite you to seek professional help. Join me next time when we will continue exploring inspiring and challenging situations, because remember, we are together in this journey. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this content, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the notification bell and like this video. See you in the next one.